Hi, welcome to another episode of Straight Lions Talk. Today we're going to be talking about Matthew Stafford, the quarterback for the Detroit Lions in the 2015 season. And we're going to be discussing a few points about Matthew. Can he take the Lions back to the playoffs this year after an 11-win season, and where he didn't have the success he had in years past with the offense, maybe struggled just a little bit. Also, we're going to be talking about maybe some of the things that people don't like about Matthew Stafford, some of the stereotypes he's developed over the last 7 years of being a Lions quarterback after being a first-round pick in 2009. If you want to follow us, we're on Twitter. The symbol is @STR Lions Talk. You can find us there. All we do is cover Detroit Lions football, Detroit Lions subjects, the coming and goings of players, draft picks, signings. During the season, we'll be covering the games before the game, start of the week, and after the game. Please follow us after the show. After the show here, you can find us on YouTube @Straight Lions Talk. Also, please leave your comments. We really appreciate it. There'll be some questions and things of that nature on there for you guys to answer. Maybe we can get a little dialogue going. But today we're going to be talking about Matthew Stafford. Like I said before, Matthew Stafford was drafted in 2009 after the debacle of 2008 when we went 0-16. He was the number 1 overall pick. And in that time, he's put up a very good resume for the Lions. He's thrown for over 4,000 yards almost every season, 5,000 yards once, 41 touchdowns one season. He has an incredible arm. And with all that said, he's only made the playoffs twice. He had 1 year when he was injured. So after last season, he threw 11 touchdowns. Had 11 wins for the Lions and took them into the playoffs and had a tough defeat against the Cowboys. We all know how that turned out with a questionable pass interference call and a couple other situations that didn't work out for us. But as for Matthew Stafford, in my opinion, I love Matthew Stafford. I think he is the best Lions quarterback we've ever had by far. And I would wish everyone would just get off his back. The kid's 27 years old. He turns 28 in February after the season. He's in the 7th season with the Lions, and I understand what everyone's saying about him, that he needs to be better, and I'm the first one to agree with that. I feel that Matthew Stafford also needs to be more productive and be more consistent throughout the season. He needs to be more consistent throughout the season. He also needs to make big plays in big games like big boy quarterbacks do. The big boy quarterbacks I'm referring to are Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Aaron Rodgers. Those guys make big plays in big games, and that's the reason they're wearing championship rings. Matthew Stafford needs to put that time in and learn how to win the way those guys have learned how to win through the years. Here in Kalamazoo, there's a show, 96.1, that has a host, Sean Belizean. It's called It Is What It Is. On that show, he gets on Matt Stafford pretty good, but to be fair to him, the host, Sean Belizean, it's all fair. What he's saying is not untrue. Matthew Stafford needs to be better. He needs to step up if this organization wants to go where it wants to go. You cannot win in this league without a quarterback anymore. The days of the Phil Simms and the Jeff Hostettlers, that's all gone. You're not going to see that anymore. But Matthew Stafford has the talent to take them there, but he has not shown that he can do that yet and be consistent in those situations. He gets on Matthew Stafford pretty well, Sean Belizean does. He says he needs to be better, and he doesn't think there's a ceiling above this. Now, in his defense, he said he is hopeful there is a ceiling higher than what he has shown, but he does not believe in his opinion that there is a higher ceiling. Now myself, I'm trying to be more optimistic about this, and I believe he is also. I think he's just given his true opinion. I would love for Matthew Stafford to have a bigger ceiling, and I think this is the season he's going to have that bigger ceiling. He's been working out like a fiend. He's in great shape. It seems like he's put a lot more time in. He's a lot more knowledgeable the new offense, which I feel fits him a lot better because we have the option to go no huddle. I think we're going to see that a lot more this season. And I really like the cast of receivers that are around him this season with the addition of Lance Moore. And I think Ryan Broyles, in my opinion, is going to live up to a second-round hype this year. and I think he's going to become a very, very good receiver for the Lions, if he can stay healthy, that is. But with all that said, Matthew Stafford does need to be better in these big games and these big situations. He needs to go on the road and knock off these winning teams in a dominant fashion and be the leader of the team. On the Twitter page and on my Twitter page, I don't know if I said that right. On my Twitter page, I put up a game of last year when they played the Saints, and Matthew Stafford's mic'd up during it. And I recommend you guys to get on there and see that, because he does an exceptional job of leading the team in that situation. And that was a winning team at home, but we all know Stafford's 0-16 on the road against winning teams. And that's not an impressive stat. And I won't say it's all Matthew Stafford's fault. I mean, the guy is a Teflon quarterback, because it seems like as recent years, there's always a defense. It was always the offensive line, the coach, the offensive coordinator. It was always someone like that we were always saying this is why he hasn't taken the next step. But in my opinion, I think that one of the reasons he didn't take the next step after he had that phenomenal breakout year in 2010 is because I thought Jim Schwartz held him back in the sense that he never developed him. He never had a quarterbacks coach for him. I thought that was a terrible move on Schwartz's part, besides the other 500 terrible moves he made towards the end there, for all the good things he did to toughen the team up. But developing quarterback probably wasn't his niche, and I really feel that Stafford was hurt in those years by just trying to do it on his own. And I think that was Schwartz's way of saying, well, if you want to get better, you're going to have to get better on your own, like a little tough love. Now, it's all, remember, Stafford came into the league at 20 years old. He didn't turn 21 until after the first season. So that's pretty impressive if you really think about it. A kid coming in at 21, he scored out the roof on the Wonderlic test, so we know he has the intelligence. The arm talent is definitely there. I just think that Schwartz didn't do a good job of developing him. And with all the criticism I gave Jim Caldwell, I will defend him on this. He brought this team together last year, and we'll see what happens this year. And I think he's done a very good job with that, and I think the players respect him, where I think respect fell a little short with Schwartz after a while. Caldwell having the vision to bring in a coordinator that fits Stafford and his talent. I mean, they're going to bring Bill Lazor in, who is now with the Dolphins, and look what he did for Ryan Tannehill. Originally, that was going to be the guy, but he turned it down to go to the Dolphins. So they brought in Joe Lombardi, who was a good choice in a system that I think really fits and can exploit Stafford's talent with the offense that they run there in Detroit and the way Joe Lombardi designs it. Now, with that said, he also brought in Jim Bob Cooter, the quarterbacks coach, the big quarterback guru coach around the league. And last year, you could see with what little time they all had together, because remember, Caldwell was a late hire. He was hired just a few weeks before the draft, about a few weeks before training camp or OTA started. So if that little bit of time he had with him last year to work with him through training camp and whatnot, I think you could see the improvement with Stafford in those situations. His footwork was better in the pocket. His footwork was better in the drops. He was more consistent on taking reads from the defense. He put the ball in situations and places where it needed to be, and he threw it away when it had to be thrown away. That was something he didn't, the big arm quarterbacks, the Brett Favres, the Michael Vicks, and all those guys have that big arm. I think they can force it in there all the time because they have through high school and college when the talent level wasn't so high. But they get into the pros and the talent level is so good, you can't fit those balls into those small windows. And, Stafford and those guys that have those big arms can do that. Aaron Rodgers does it. I mean, that's a blessing to have that big arm, but sometimes it's a curse in the same respects because they want to try to fit it in windows and spots and in between coverages that don't mix. But with all that said, I think Caldwell did a great job of bringing in those two people that had developed quarterbacks, and Lombardi was a quarterbacks coach at one time, and Jim Bob Cooter's a good quarterback coach. I think you can see the development of Stafford, and this is something that kind of lacked for a couple, 3 years, because Stafford never got better than what he was his first 2 years and 3 years with Detroit. He never developed any more than what he was, and I think that was a knock on Schwartz. But again, I'm not defending Stafford. Stafford's a big boy. He's playing in a big boy league. He needs to make decisions and put himself in situations that make him successful. He has all the money in the world. He could go out and get a good quarterback coach in the offseason. But with that said, I think Caldwell's done a great job of developing Matthew Stafford. He's a quarterback guy himself, so that helps a lot. Also, I wanted to throw out that since 2012, Matthew Stafford has had 143 drops. Now, that is most in the NFL over that time period. Now, with that said, I will defend Stafford with that. We haven't had very good wide receivers, but besides Calvin Johnson, we got Golden Tate last year, and he was targeted 160 times. Calvin was targeted 100 times, which is great. We drafted Eric Ebron in the first round. He did not have the success that we all had hoped he would, and some that predicted he would coming out of college. Now, me personally, I didn't think he'd have great success, just because tight ends usually don't come into the league and just blow it up. Vernon Davis didn't. Jimmy Graham didn't. Go down the list. Julius Thomas didn't. All those guys never came into the league year one and just killed it. It takes maybe a few years, which I hope is not a few years for Eric Ebron. I hope it's this season. I think he could be a big acquisition to the offense and a big help in stretching the middle of the field and maybe loosening up some of that outside coverage that's on Tate and on Calvin. And he could open up the middle for someone like Lance Moore, Ryan Broyles, T.J. Jones, guys like that. I don't think Jeremy Ross and I don't think Corey Fuller are going to make the team. I think they're going to get pushed out by Lance Moore and T.J. Jones and Ryan Broyles for that fact. But with that said, Stafford coming into the season having all those drops. Now, I will blame some of it on Stafford. I don't think he throws the easiest ball in the whole world to catch. I've always thought that if you've ever played catch with a guy, and some of those guys, if you ever played catch with a friend or a quarterback, or if you knew a quarterback that was really good, and he was throwing balls to you, some of the guys, when you play catch with them, the ball absorbs into your hands. It's like they're laying it right there for you. Now, but someone like Matthew Stafford, he has that big, huge arm, and, if you ever play catch with a guy that has a big arm, sometimes it feels like they're throwing a rock at you. I mean, it makes the football feel like it's about 18 pounds instead of being 18 ounces. With all that said, I put 50% of it on Stafford, 50% on the receivers. We haven't had the greatest receiving core for him besides Calvin Johnson over the years. But over the last couple of years, I think the Lions have done a good job addressing that. I would have liked to have seen Mike Evans slip last year into Eric Ebron's spot. I think he would have been a good acquisition. But ideally, Odell Beckham Jr. was the guy I wanted. I wanted Odell Beckham Jr. I wanted Donald Brown in Eric Ebron's spot. I never, ever once thought to myself that Odell Beckham Jr. would be the player. I thought he had the potential to be the player he was last season, but I didn't think he'd get there so quick. So that's kudos to the Giants, and that's kudos to him for developing so fast and showing everybody he had the talent. Now, with Matthew Stafford, he is also, like I said, he's kind of the Teflon quarterback. He gets away with a lot. But last year, he was sacked 45 times. The offensive line didn't help him a lot. And one of the situations I don't think that helped a lot for the Lions was the offensive line. The offensive line was not sweet last year. The year prior, they were one of the best offensive lines in the league. But one of the biggest losses we had this year was Dominic Raiola, and I'm so glad that guy's gone. I can't describe to you how glad I am that Dominic Raiola is gone. For many, many years, I've wished that Dominic Raiola would get hurt, not in a serious way, but just enough time to miss enough games where we had to replace him. But finally, the time has come. We're not calling Dominic Raiola back. As long as Travis Swanson and Laken Tomlinson and a few other guys can stay healthy, he shouldn't have to come back to the Lions. I think that's going to shore up the middle of the offensive line. If you ever watch that offensive line, it didn't create that pocket, that cup that, Brady's offensive line does. Breeze's offensive line did, not last year because they were terrible. Aaron Rodgers' offensive line. The middle of the pocket was always collapsed, and teams knew they could overpower Dominic Raiola. Not with two guys, with one guy. So I think with the acquisition of Travis Swanson, who Brett Bielema came out and said he was the best offensive lineman he's ever had. Now, that's a big menu of players that Brett Bielema has coached over the years through Wisconsin and at Arkansas. But he came out and said that Travis Swanson was probably the best of all of them, the smartest, everything. So he knew he had the smarts. I think last year he lacked a little bit in strength, but a whole season in an NFL weight program, I think is going to benefit Travis Swanson tremendously, where you're going to see great strides from him this year. Now, with all that said, we drafted Laken Tomlinson this year, and we got Manny Ramirez in a trade. Now, that adds great depth. Now, whichever one starts, still, Laken Tomlinson's the future, but if Manny Ramirez has to come in a pinch, he can play center and he can play guard. And probably right tackle if he was really, really called on and we were desperate, which we could be, because Cornelius Lucas is hurt now, and that could be problematic for the offensive line. But the offensive line is one of the youngest in the NFL. Now, that can be really good. Like the Dallas Cowboys had a young offensive line, and that worked out great for them last year. But a few of the guys were a little seasoned, had a couple, 3 years under their belt. Where Riley Reif has a couple years under his belt. Adrian Waddle needs to step up this season, prove that the first season wasn't a fluke and he can stay healthy and be productive on the field like he was as a rookie, an undrafted rookie for that fact. I thought Larry Warford took a step back last season. He couldn't stay healthy for the most part. He didn't have the dominance he had the year before, so I hope that maybe he got his nose rubbed in it a little bit and he'll be able to bounce back and have a more dominant season like he did as a rookie. Remember, he was a third-round pick, and we thought we just had a steal. Sims is gone this year. Rob Sims, he's gone. He possibly could be back if there's injuries, but Manny Ramirez could take that spot, or Laken Tomlinson. I think they want Laken Tomlinson to take it, but he's going to have to prove himself that he can do that in camps. If not, it'll probably be Manny Ramirez's spot, but I'm going to give the edge to Laken Tomlinson. I think he's going to prove to everyone in the Lions organization that he can take that spot. And then, like I said, we'll have Travis Swanson in the middle. He's 6'4", 320 pounds. That's something we haven't had. He's athletic. He'll be able to get to the second level. Incredibly smart. He can play guard. I just think that's going to be a big help to Matthew Stafford. I think he's going to have more time to throw. If you watched a lot of the videos of last year's games, he was throwing under duress a lot. I mean, a tremendous amount of time. He was throwing balls and completing the pass downfield to receivers with guys hitting him in the chest and the ankles, on the side, from the blind side, right side, left side, everywhere. He was getting pressure constantly. Now, I know the blocking scheme didn't really set well with the Lions. I mean, hopefully, along with the offensive line and the receivers having another year in the system, and Matthew Stafford having another year in the system, that the Lions' offense can gel and Stafford can be more successful back there, and maybe having another year with a quarterback coach learning how to read defenses better and what certain situations in that particular offensive series and or plays, he'll be able to find receivers and have a little bit more time to let those plays develop. I think that hurt Stafford last year, not having time to let the play develop. He had to get rid of it before he wanted to, due to the fact that the offensive line was not good at all. But going into the season this year, Matthew Stafford's going to have to be on top of his game. Logistically, our schedule is a nightmare. I've talked about it before on previous videos. The schedule is very, very, very difficult this season. We play a lot of top teams. We play Denver. We play Seattle. We play the new and improved Chicago Bears. They will be better under Fox. The Packers will be the Packers. They'll be consistent. Why? Because they have Aaron Rodgers. He's a winner. Minnesota, everyone thinks they're on the rise. I don't like Teddy Bridgewater, so I think they'll be okay there. But with that schedule, Matthew Stafford's going to have to be on his game. He's going to have to be the leader because there's going to be games he's going to have to step in and be the leader on the field. And you watch that video I talked about earlier against the Saints. It's on Twitter, and I'm at Straight Lions Talk. You can find it there. Right below this video, you can see Stafford and the success he has controlling the game. You can just see it. He's so focused. He has a laser focus to him, and he's just ultimately successful. It's just a great game to watch. You can see the leadership. You see the respect the players have for him, the confidence he exudes to other players and for himself in that situation. Down by 2 touchdowns, leads us back. Quinn has a big interception, but everyone fed off Stafford in that situation. But he's going to have to be on top of his game. There's a few things I like about Matthew Stafford in those situations, a few things I don't like about Matthew Stafford in those situations. But Matthew Stafford as a whole, his quarterback career as a Lion. Now let's remember something. This season against the Falcons in London, he broke Bobby Lane's all-time touchdown record for the Lions. And Bobby Lane, are you freaking kidding me? That's what a joke the quarterback situation's been for the Detroit Lions over the years. Matthew Stafford, 6 seasons in, breaks Bobby Lane's record that was held for 40-some-odd freaking years. It's ridiculous. That's how bad the organization's been. We went through Rodney Peete, Kramer, Scott Mitchell, John Kitna, Mike McMahon, gluttony of quarterbacks, and I don't want to go back to that. I'm not saying that Matthew Stafford hasn't lived up to the expectations that we want him to, but I think he might be a quarterback too that also needs maybe just a little more talent around him than the guys of Brady, Breeze. Well, I think Breeze needs a little more talent around him. Aaron Rodgers and Brady probably the number 1, number 2 guys that don't require a ton of talent to be around them. You know, some of those guys go to other teams. Maybe they're not so good. Brady, number 1 overall because he's never had great receivers. The one year he did, look what happened. He set records all over the place. But I think Stafford's going to be a guy that needs a really good running back. He needs a good set of receivers. He needs a good offensive line. I mean, just like Troy Aikman did. Troy Aikman's a great quarterback. He was highly accurate, which is something Stafford struggles with, is his accuracy. His completion percentage is not great compared to the big-time quarterbacks. But I do think he's going to be a guy that needs a little more talent around him to have success, at least at this point. Now, he's only 27, and Aaron Rodgers is 31, and everyone's saying he's in the prime of his career, so Stafford's still got 4 years. He'll be in his 11th season to get there. I mean, if you guys all, I know everyone hates Stafford, wants to get rid of him, and he can only throw to Calvin. Well, guess what? He threw to Golden Tate a ton last year, and Golden Tate didn't have nearly the drops. His drops to attempts last season, drops to completions last year was higher than Calvin. So don't tell me that Stafford can't hit a smaller target. I think some of it comes down to route running for those guys. I don't think last year was the greatest route running season we had as a team due to the new offense, and maybe some guys didn't understand the positions they needed to be in to be successful or to make Matthew Stafford successful. But with that said, Matthew Stafford's accuracy is not awesome. That's probably the downfall of his quarterback resume right now, is that he's not accurate. In some games, he is terribly not accurate. He's never had a completion percentage higher than 65% in his career. That's, the big boy quarterbacks, Breeze, Rodgers, and those guys get into the 70s. Ben Roethlisberger and those guys like that. And if you want to get to that next level as a quarterback and take the team to the next level where they're highly competitive in big games, you're going to have to get that completion percentage up, because there's going to demand certain times in certain big games where you've got to make a throw. I call it making big boy plays. You watch Tom Brady, you watch Aaron Rodgers, you watch those guys, they make big boy plays. Look at Ray Brady last year in the Super Bowl. Led the team down on that drive. Big boy quarterback play. That's where Stafford needs to get to. With that said, there's articles out now that Stafford's accuracy has improved due to his new development in his footwork under Jim Bob Cooter, which that's where it all starts. He's never had the best feet. He has good feet. He's just never had them set and positioned right where he could be successful. He's always thrown off his back foot, had that huge arm, throwing sidearm, which that is an attribute for him when the situation requires it, but it's not the best to do it all the time, in which he gets into those bad habits. And that last season with Jim Schwartz, he was throwing sidearm like every pass. Now, whether that was he was kind of giving up a little bit, the team kind of quit on Schwartz, whatever it wasn't good quarterback play. Where last year I thought that was some of the best quarterback play he's had since he's been here. I would say it was just as good as the 2010 season, even though he didn't have the stats to back it up. But the play was excellent. He made good decisions. He should have made a few more. He missed a lot of passes for wide open guys, but I think that's going to improve this year. I think guys are going to understand their routes better. The offensive line's going to understand the scheme better. We're more athletic offensive line-wise. We have more depth at receiver, I think, this year than we've had in many, many years. I think Lance Moore's a huge acquisition for the Lions. I think he's going to be able to stretch the middle of the field. If we can get some productivity out of our tight ends, if Joseph Fourier can come back and be successful after a fluky ankle injury, with dog peed or something, if Eric Ebron can live up to the talent, I think we can Stafford can be successful. And he's going to need, it's going to be a team effort, but ultimately Matt Stafford has to lead them down the team. We just drafted Amir Abdullah in the backfield. If Joyke Bell can come back healthy, which there's some concerns right now where he's not maybe healthy, but if he can come back and be healthy, Joyke Bell that is, and with the acquisition of Amir Abdullah, he can stay healthy during the season. Health's going to be a big key to this whole situation and for the Lions this season to be successful. But having that new outside threat where you can catch the ball in the backfield, a lot of different things like Javid Best had. Can you imagine if Javid Best had 4 seasons of pure injury-free football, how much success the Lions might have had, or some games they could have maybe turned another way with the breakaway speed he had. But with all that said, I really think Matthew Stafford this season is going to need to show to everybody, me included, because I kind of got down on him last year for not making big boy plays and probably erupted to a few of my friends. But if he can just show, and I think this year he seems a little bit more mature, a little more, savvy as a quarterback, and like he's kind of taken this team as his, which I really like that. I think that's a big step for him. I think Jim Caldwell deserves a lot of credit for that. I think he's a highly intelligent man. He's very well spoken, and he speaks in a nice, calm way. And I think it resonates well with Stafford, where the bullying, tough guy crap that Jim Schwartz didn't really set well with Stafford, and kind of, shrugged it off. But I think Caldwell has shown him how to be a leader and how to take this team where it needs to go. So ultimately, it's going to fall on Matthew Stafford to be successful, to get him into the playoffs. He's taken him there twice in his 7 years as quarterback, which, isn't great, but it's better than what we've had before. And I think this might be the start of something. We're a young team. If we could just hold on to Terrell Austin, that'd be great because the defense was good. But I think it's a more complete team, coaches-wise and player-wise, than we've had in a while. Now, Xavier Zanders is owed a lot to that because he's done a great job as the assistant GM, picking players, finding players in free agency, things of that nature, and players that fit our system and our culture now in Detroit. We try to draft a more intelligent player. I've said this on previous shows. Joe Gibbs used to say this. He said, talent wins the first 3 quarters, character wins the 4th. And I think we have a lot more character on the team. We draft highly intelligent scholar athletes now that are athletic. I'm not saying sometimes you don't need a bad boy. You don't need a guy that maybe breaks a few laws on the team to really set that other side of the, have that other edge on the team. But, for Matthew Stafford to get in the playoffs, if let's say the Lions do get into the playoffs this season, which I think it's going to be it's not guaranteed. They're going to have to come out of the gate quick because there's a lot of tough teams. We play Philadelphia. We play, a lot of teams that are going to give us a lot of fits. But I think if he can get into the playoffs, Matthew Stafford's had heroic playoff games. I'm looking at some stats right here. He has a quarterback rating of 92.4. That's higher than any season he's had since he's been in the pros. He's never broken 100. Excuse me, he had one season he's 97. I think it was 97, maybe 92. Anyway, you can look it up. It doesn't matter. But he's never broken 100, where Aaron Rodgers has broken 100 7 times. His completion rating, his quarterback rating has been over 100 7 times. That's Aaron Rodgers, that is. Where Stafford in the playoff, he's actually really good. He's thrown for 703 yards in 2 playoff games and 4 touchdowns. So, I'm not saying look, Stafford's been so great and everyone else has been terrible. That game last year, the Brandon Pettigrew play where everyone thought it was pass interference, and I agree it was pass interference. And I also agree that Des Bryant should have got a flag on the play for running out on the field, even though people say they do it all the time. I've never seen a guy run out to the outside edge numbers and confront the referee with his helmet off and not get a flag. If that was a Lion player, guaranteed he probably would have been thrown out of the game, 15-yard penalty, and a huge fine. But with all that said, the Brandon Pettigrew play, it was pass interference. But the problem with that play was Matthew Stafford didn't put that ball where it belonged. That ball should have been thrown out in front of Pettigrew, and he probably would have ran it down the field quite a ways if he would have thrown it in the correct position. It was not a comeback route. Now, maybe it was designed to be a comeback route, but Pettigrew broke it off, and he had the linebacker beat. That ball should have been thrown out in front of him over Pettigrew's head. And you can see, if you watch the play, you can see he has separation on the linebacker. Stafford puts that ball where it needs to be. That's more successful. That's what I'm talking about. Big boy plays. That's where the Lions quarterback, Matthew Stafford, needs to be better. He needs to make big boy football plays. That's a big boy football play in a big boy situation. Tom Brady makes those plays. Aaron Rodgers makes those plays. That's where everybody wants Matthew Stafford to be, is at that level or near that level, to put the Lions in situations to be successful in those critical moments. But with all that said, I really think this season Matthew Stafford, and I think currently if you were to rate quarterbacks, he would probably be top 15, somewhere in there, throughout the league. I mean, if you can play the game of, and I've done this on other shows, hey, let's play the game. You want Sam Bradford? You want Matthew Stafford? Well, right now I want Matthew Stafford, but I do think Sam Bradford, fantasy alert, is going to have a huge year this season, because I think Sam Bradford is going to be highly successful in Chip Kelly's system, because that's the system he ran in college. Now, remember, Sam Bradford, the year Sam Bradford won the Heisman, he was supposed to come out for the draft, and he came back to Oklahoma to try to win a national championship, and Stafford came out. The rumor was we like Sam Bradford better. Now, who would you have wanted? The big rumor was Matthew Stafford, the China doll. Well, I would beg to differ. The hits Sam Bradford took in his pro career and the hits Matthew Stafford took in his pro career for injuries, compare the two. Stafford got rocked twice. Once in the Cleveland game where he separated his shoulder, came back in with a separated shoulder, won the game for us as a rookie, and then he had to sit out after playing 10 games because the shoulder kept popping out. And then the third game of the year when we played the Bears, stupid Jeff Backus in all of his glory whiffs on a block on Julius Peppers, one of the NFL's greatest defensive ends that's ever played, and gets blindsided without even seeing it coming and driven into the ground, which probably be a penalty now, and breaks his collarbone, and everyone says he's a China doll. I don't think those are China doll plays, but that's just me. Now, Sam Bradford's blown out his knee a couple times, hurt a shoulder, hurt a wrist, been hurt every single year. I kind of think he's a China doll, but remember, we would have had him. Supposedly, we liked him better than Matthew Stafford, and we would have taken him number one if they would have came out in the same draft. Now, I don't know who you guys want. I want Matthew Stafford after seeing the 7 years between the two. But with all that said, let's go through and play a little game of that. You want Jay Cutler? I don't. You want Teddy Bridgewater? Nope. You want to be in Cleveland's situation like we used to be and try to search for a quarterback every single year and sign a so-so quarterback that some other team didn't want? I mean, they got Brian Hoyer and everyone's jumping up and down they got Josh McCown and everyone's jumping up and down like he's such a great savior. Now, what did he do in Tampa Bay last year? He was terrible after signing a huge contract, and the year before played some backup games for the Bears. Now, that's a typical Lions move right there. That's something we would do. I like the situation we're in with Matthew Stafford. I'll let you guys do that yourselves. You go through and play what quarterback would you want. I think you're going to find you would rather have Matt Stafford between 10 and 15. That's where I think he ranks right now. But for this particular season, the 2015 season, I think Matthew Stafford's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I don't think top 5, but I think he's going to be a top 10 quarterback. I think the situation sets up well for him. I think the offensive line's going to play better. I think it's a smarter offensive line. I like the receiving core better. Lance Moore's familiar with the system, so it's not going to be a learning curve for him. Calvin Johnson has another year, and he needs to stay healthy. That's something that's really... I'm probably going to have a Trade Calvin Johnson show again. That's probably I think it was the first show I ever did. But we're going to have another one and really break down why I think he should be traded, or should have been traded this season during the draft this year. But another place, another time. Calvin Johnson needs to stay healthy. He needs to stay healthy this year, all year, injury-free, not dinged up, not being a decoy like he was last year. Injuries are going to be key. We need Golden Tate to stay healthy. We need Eric Ebron to step up. With all those factors, I think the Lions are poised for success. The additions in the backfield, if Theo Riddick can keep improving as he has the first 2 years, which with that pick, just to add a little side note of I'm so great because I wanted Andre Ellington over Theo Riddick in the 6th round, and look what he's doing for the Cardinals. That's the guy I wanted, but Theo Riddick has shown to be a very good player for the Lions, and he's developing very well. He looks a lot like Andre Ellington. It's just taken a little longer to get there, but if he can keep improving with the addition of Amir Abdullah, and if Joyce Bell can stay healthy, he's another one, needs to stay healthy, could have a huge year. I think the Lions offense is going to be okay. I think there's going to be success for Matthew Stafford. I'm not going to give my prediction right now what the Lions are going to do. I'll do that probably right after training camp's over. where I think they're going to be, how they're going to look. I mean, preseason's going to tell a lot. But with all that said, I thank you guys for joining me. Like I said, you can find me on Twitter at STR Lions Talk. It's at Straight Lions Talk, STR Lions Talk. You can find me on there. I appreciate if you guys would follow, retweet some stuff. You can also find me on YouTube. It's at Straight Lions Talk. Again, STR Lions Talk. It's on YouTube the same way as my channel. If you guys have any questions or want to leave any comments, please do. Negative, positive. We'll get into some chats. I know some people did on the last video we did. That'd be great. I really like that. It's a lot of fun. So I'll see you guys next time, and go Lions.